We want to welcome everyone to this hearing on the Seapower and Projection Forces Subcommittee regarding the capacity of the U.S. Navy to project power with large surface combatants. I am going to, in the interest of time, waive my opening statement and put that in the record because we understand we may have votes at about 3:15, and we think this is an important hearing. We want to make sure we get as much of it in as possible. We are delighted today to have two witnesses that have a great deal of expertise in this matter. We have with us Rear Admiral Peter Fanta, Director of Surface Warfare, and also Rear Admiral Vic Mercado, the Director of Assessment Division. And in just a moment, I'm going to ask, I think, Admiral Fanta, you're going to give the opening statement for both. But I'd like also, Admiral Mercado, if you would take just a moment after that opening statement and give us a brief overview of what the Director of the Assessment Division does. And Admiral, also after your opening statement, if you would tell us a little bit of what your capacity as Director of Surface Warfare so our members have a good feeling of the capacity you bring to the committee. With that, I'd like to recognize my ranking member, Mr. Courtney, for any comments that he might have.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, in the interest of time, I'm going to waive all opening remarks and make sure the floor is available to our two witnesses as soon as possible.
Without objection, we will put all of the opening statements and make them a part of the record. And with that, Admiral Fanta, we look forward to any opening remarks you may have for us.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ranking Member Courtney, I'll keep this brief so we can get to your questions and hopefully satisfy you with our answers. You asked us today to discuss the capacity of the large surface combatants in the United States Navy to project power. The cruisers and destroyers we have of today were created during the height of the Cold War. That said, we didn't rest on our laurels. We have continued to upgrade them and modernize them over the past 30 to 40 years of their service life, and we will continue to do so. We took that technology that was in there from the 1960s and 1970s, and we have continued to modernize it and evolve it. And in fact, the technology going in today's destroyers are the height of what's available around the world in that level of surface combatant. Bottom line is, we're installing these advanced technologies on our new surface combatants because if we cannot own the seas and control the seas, we cannot project power from the seas. You asked us about the capacity of large surface combatants to project power. The answer is not a simple one, but really a three-phased question and a three-phased answer. We have the fight today, and what's our capacity and capability to do that? We have the fight in the near to mid-term, maybe 5 or maybe 10 to 15 years from now, and we have a peacetime presence and deterrence mission. All of those have to be factored in, as my colleague Admiral Mercado will tell you about how he factors all those when he checks my math on whether I have enough ships. So it's really not just about a single answer, but it's a multitude of answers we have to put together. If you ask me about the fight today and can we win against a near-peer adversary, the answer is absolutely. Now, there's always risk in war, and we might take some damage here and there, but against a near-peer adversary in a fight today against the United States Navy, we will prevail. That's based upon our best intelligence estimates of what's out there throughout the world and what our capabilities are against those assets. But that's today. Tomorrow's fight is slightly different, and it must be an estimate of where we think we will get in tomorrow's fight. And that fight may be 10, 15, or 20 years down the road. And again, you're asking us to provide our best guess on what we see based on what's evolving in technology and where our current technology is to counter these new threats. So what we will tell you here is that we see risk in tomorrow's fight. If we do not modernize fast enough, if we do not build fast enough, if we slow down our build rate of large surface combatants, if we slow down our modernization rate of large surface combatants, there will be a risk when the advanced threats arrive in numbers from the development stages they are in now to a production stage from a potential adversary sometime in the next decade plus. That's the war fight. I'll keep this brief and just quickly describe the non-combat operations or the presence operations. Those are governed by what we call the Optimized Fleet Response Plan. That's basically a long sentence to tell you how long we deploy for and how often. We deploy optimally for 7 months out of every 36. The rest of the time, we're not sitting there, but we're training, we're modernizing our ships, we're maintaining our ships, and we're making sure our sailors know how to fight our ships. We also maintain a surge capability in case something comes up in the world. So that's that blend that we have between today's fight, the fight of tomorrow, 10 to 15 years down the road, and what we have for peacetime presence. When I don't have enough ships, I have to take risk or I incur risk, and that's whether in the warfight or in the peacetime presence requirements somewhere around the world. We will talk to you about, when asked, about ballistic missile requirements, about high-end warfight requirements, about peacetime presence requirements, and what that capability and capacity mix is between them. It's not just about large surface combatants. I'm the Director of Surface Warfare for the United States Navy. You asked what I do. I buy not only ships and weapon systems, I also buy the sailors. I pay for the sailors that man them. I make sure they're trained and pay for their training. I buy from everything from training systems to Tomahawk cruise missiles. I buy civilian manpower and I buy civilian milling machines in our shipyards. I buy everything from advanced weapon systems to sailors to sonars. Funding all these puts pressure on just the simple number of capacity of our large surface ships to do their job, but I have to have this blend of high-end capability and the numbers we need. It takes me 15 years to develop and field a new ship. It takes me 7 years to develop and field a new weapon system. I have to make sure I'm keeping an eye on both those to make sure that someplace 15 years down the road we are not short on ships or we don't have an advanced capability that does not allow us to win the future warfight. So whether we are a wartime steaming or peacetime presence operations, the number of ships determines if we are at sea. The sailors, weapons, readiness determines how capable and lethal we are. Presence without lethality and without a capable force is impotence. Presence with a lethal and capable force is deterrence against any future adversary. With that, we are standing by to answer your questions. I've already described slightly what I do. I buy surface ships, weapons, sailors, training, modernization, maintenance, and everything in between. I own the movies that they watch in the evening when they're off watch. I own putting ice cream machines on the mess decks so they can put on that extra 5 pounds in deployment. I also own the ability to shoot down long-range ballistic missiles when they're coming at our carriers. I own that range of everything that you see, and I make sure our sailors are ready to operate and maintain these systems. Over to my colleague, Admiral Mikado.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for allowing me to appear before you today. The best way to describe my job, and Admiral Fano alluded to it, is I grade homework. I am Director of Assessments Division. As you all well understand, that we have many, many competing requirements, and we have very limited resources or a finite number of resources. So I have a team that goes through and assess all the programs and things that Navy can invest in and give my recommendation to the CNO based on a priority of what I call integrated warfighting. So we have threats that are out there that we project out into the future in the near term, and then we have a number of programs designed to pace or outpace those threats. My job is to review those, assess them based on data, and make the recommendation to the CNO. Previously, I've been in this job now for about 6 weeks, and previously I commanded Carrier Strike Group 8 out of Norfolk.
Well, thank you both for being here. I'm going to use just a little bit of my time for my opening statement for a questioning, but help me, and either of you can respond to these. No magic in the order or who would respond, but as we look right now, one of the concerns we have, of course, is with our surface combatants and how many we're going to need as we look out into the future. But also, one of the things that impacts that is the deployment cycles that we're on right now. And both of you have spoken with Mr. Courtney and I about the concern we have with current deployments being as much as 9 months on some of our ships. Can you tell me why that has a negative impact and what we're doing to try to mitigate that and reduce those down?
Yes, sir. Average deployment length right now that we're seeing across the Navy is 9.2 months, based on the data we've seen over the last about 2 years. That's a function of being everywhere to cover every contingency that we've been asked to for the last several years. Some ships that we have been on 4 deployments in 4 years. We recognize that's a strain on our force. That's a strain on our sailors. That's a strain on the ships themselves. That's a strain on whether I can modernize them fast enough. And that's a strain on, frankly, our resources and our funding. Because every time I keep it out at sea, I have to bring it back and fix even more things because I'm exceeding that 7 months out of 36 that I would ideally deploy a ship. So what we are doing to counter that is we are establishing, as I said in my opening statement, this fleet response plan that allows us to get on a steady state operation that blends this modernization, maintenance, training, and surge time to match what we would ideally like to be a 7-month deployment out of a 36-month cycle. We are not there yet. We have just deployed our first, or we have just put our first strike group into that process. This is a learning time for us to see where the pivots and where the shortfalls are on it, but we are on the track to get to that stability, and our intention is to get to that stability in the late teens to early 20s, with a full-up strike groups being on that cycle. With the number of ships we have right now, that will be a challenge, but as you know, I am building ships at a rate and keeping ships on board at a rate that I expect in the early 20s allow me to get to those deployment cycles of maybe not 7 months, but someplace between 7 and 8 months.
So would it be fair to say, as you just mentioned, that the number of ships has a huge impact on whether you can get down from that 9.2 to your goal of 7?
That's correct, sir.
And would it also be fair to say that if you don't get down to that goal, as you mentioned, it puts an additional strain on your sailors, which I take it would mean strain on their families, strain on their lives, and maybe even strain on your difficulty in retaining those sailors?
All those are a blend, sir. When we resource all of this, we have to put all those together, and that includes the recruiting of new sailors and the retention of the current sailors.
So it would have an impact on both the recruitment of new sailors and the retention of existing
Yes,
sailors.
sir, it would.
And also it has an impact on the life cycle of our ships and how many years we can get out of those ships. Is that fair to say?
I can't tell you an exact number, but if I deploy 4 times in 4 years, there will be an impact on whether I can get that ship to 35 years of service life, 38 years of service life, or ideally what I'd like to do, 40 years of service life.
And if we don't have the number of ships that we need, you mentioned 2 things in your opening statement, and I know I specifically told you not that you didn't have to put your written statement in, but in your written statement you talked about a third. So you mentioned warfight and peacetime presence, but also both of you in your combined written statement talked about the importance of deterrence, and that is a part, I guess, of the peacetime presence. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. I say it's a combination. It is a part of our peacetime presence, but also that high-end warfighting capability that we have strategically as a Navy, I think serves to underpin any kind of deterrence whole-of-government model. So yes, we have to be there. We have to be forward deployed. We have to support the COCOM demand and the peacetime presence as outlined in their theater campaign plans, but also we need to preserve our capability and capacity to conduct high-end warfare against a near-peer competitor. As long as we also show that and demonstrate that, I say that also underpins any deterrence strategy.
So it would be fair to say if we have fewer ships, if we don't have the deployment time so that we can do the high-end training that you would need, it could impact our deterrence capabilities.
Yes, sir. And I think the fleet response plan model that Admiral Fanta talked about helps us get on that road. I mean, we need to get discipline into starting our availabilities on time ending them so we can go into a consolidated basic training phase and get the ships trained in the basics of getting underway and fighting the ships individually. Then we go into what we call the integrated phase so we can gather them together to fight as a carrier strike group.
So
And
it-
what
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you.
I'm saying, what we lose when you talked about continuous deployments, we lose that opportunity to go back and bring the ships back to get them into that training cycle, because high-end warfare capability and training atrophies over time, because even when you are deployed and you face an adversary, it's never to the level that you see when you ramp up during your training in the fleet response plan.
So if I look at that fleet response plan, and Admiral Phantom, maybe you can help me with this, but we were also talking about our BMD requirements, and as I understand it, the current BMD requirements are 40. I think your goal, and you now have 33 ships, is that correct? And you, don't let me put words in your mouth, you tell me if I'm incorrect on
Yes, sir. My requirement at this point is 40 advanced capability ships that have the capability of both knocking down an incoming ballistic missile while simultaneously looking for and firing upon a incoming cruise missile that's at the surface of the ocean. So that's 40, that's a minimum of 40 advanced capability ballistic missile ships. I have approximately 33 ballistic missile capable of ships. That's not to say they're advanced to that level. And we will reach that in a current build rate of that 40 ships in approximately the mid-20s at this point of those advanced capability ships, sir.
So you need on your requirements 40 with the advanced capabilities. Right now you have 33, but they do not all have advanced capabilities on them.
That's correct, sir. We are modernizing those ships, and we are building more with the advanced capability even as we speak.
Does your fleet modernization plan apply to the BMD ships as well?
Ideally, it will when we fully implement it, but at this point,
I'm
it's
sorry, fleet response plan.
fleet response plan. Yes, sir. Ideally, it will. At this point, it is primarily, we have started it around the carrier strike group. A lot of the ballistic missile deployers are independent deployers. So what we would do eventually is to bring them into that response plan. They are not necessarily currently under that cycle. That will be out towards the 20s before we put all these together.
So it would be fair to say that today we have the need for 40 with the advanced capability. We only have 33, and they do not all have the advanced capabilities. And that right now we do not really have a plan of getting those deployments down from the average 9.2 to 7 or something around there for our BMD capable ships. Is that fair?
Let me adjust that slightly, sir.
Okay.
There's a difference because the advanced capability ships are primarily used to defend Navy assets in a high-end fight at sea against a near-peer competitor with advanced capabilities. The BMD ships that I spoke of earlier that we have in the low 30s right now and continue to build more are primarily for COCOM requests to defend other assets such as defended asset lists in various parts of the world. So they are perfectly capable of handling advanced threats, but just in that one BMD capability. What we don't want to do is mix the peacetime presence requirement of those, I won't call them lesser capable, but baseline capability ballistic missile ships with the advanced ones. I need to beat a high-end competitor at sea in the middle of a fight in the middle of the ocean.
And I'm going to try not to be too much longer, but I just want to make sure I've got this on the 40 ship requirement that you have, and I know that's for the advanced capability. You now have 33 BMD capable ships, not all with the advanced capability. But it is my understanding from what you have said that I really do not at this time, I hope to later have a plan that will help me get the deployments down on the ships that I have from that 9.2 to roughly 7 to 8 months at that time. Is that fair?
Yes, sir, that's fair. It's not that we don't have a plan, it's that we need to get to the numbers to allow us to implement
So
it.
you would need more numbers to get there?
I would need more total numbers of capability, not capacity.
Okay.
In other words, I need to modernize to get to those numbers.
So you would need more numbers to get there. And then two last bullet points, and then I'll shift to Mr. Courtney. The demand signal is actually much higher than the requirements. Your current demand signal from the COCOMs for BMD ships would be around 77 ships. Is that fair to say?
The demand signal is twofold, sir. For a high-end naval warfight and protection of naval assets and our bases that we need to fight in various places of the world is those 40 ships I discussed.
Okay.
On top of that, COCOMs have a requirement. And if you look at it from another X number of spots, today it might be 77, all right, total ships, including the 40. 77 spots around the world that we might put a ballistic missile defense ship to cover some contingency of some nation threatening us or threatening an ally or threatening a vital asset with a ballistic missile at that point. So if you don't think upon it as I need a ship there all the time, it's a spot in the ocean where I might need a ship sometime in the future against a potential adversary that threatens us or an ally.
But you can't cover all of that today with the current fleet that we have. Would that be fair to say?
That's fair. I need to modernize to get to those numbers.
And you need more numbers.
I need to at least modernize. If I have every ship modernized to the point where every ship can handle that threat, then the numbers work out correct.
Well, let's go back to the 33 that you've got. Would it help you if this committee could help you get 3 more ships and you had 36 versus 33?
It depends on when, because it takes...
Suppose we could give them to you tomorrow.
Then it would always help, yes, sir.
Suppose I could get you, instead of 3, I could get you 6. Would that help you better than the 3?
I can't build them that fast,
But let's assume I could.
If you could, absolutely.
The flip side, would it hurt you if you had less than the 33?
Yes, sir, from a warfighting perspective.
Then tell me how in the world the Navy can suggest that we can take out 11 cruisers when 5 of those have BMD capability on them.
Because of the way that I'm blending in the capability of that advanced capability.
No, that's not my question, and I don't want to put you on a difficult spot, but here's what I'm saying. You've just told me if you have 5 more, it will help you significantly.
Yes, sir.
We've got 5 cruisers out there with BMD capability that the Navy's telling me they want us to pull offline today. So I'm not promising you those next month or 6 years. I'm saying you got them today, and the Navy's telling me they want to take them out of that fleet. It's got to make sense that that would hurt us and stretch us on our BMD capabilities that we currently are looking at today. So explain to me how that would not.
So what I'm trying to, yes. First answer is yes.
Okay.
All right.
Then, go ahead. I don't want to cut you off. You answer.
I have more concerns 5 to 7 years from now.
Gotcha.
When the numbers of threats increase.
I got you there.
So I would rather have those cruisers available at that time.
But what you're saying is, and you've been fair in saying this, you're taking risks today so that you'll have them tomorrow. But what we're also saying is, and the Navy is telling us this, because the Navy, when they first came out, suggested we took 7 of those cruisers out, never even talked about having them tomorrow. The Navy doesn't have them in their fight-up at all. So basically, what I think we can agree on is if you have 5 less BMD-capable ships, it's going to be much more difficult for you, at least in the short term, than if you had those 5 cruisers. Is that fair to say?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and with that, ask Mr. Courtney to.
And to both witnesses for your testimony and your service. Again, I just want to sort of go back over a point that the chairman touched on a moment ago, which is the request from the combatant commanders, which we hear a lot about on this committee, and then obviously the optimized fleet response plan, and just sort of, how do they sort of intersect, and does someone have to kind of adjudicate, the signals and the plan?
Sir, when we talk about the requirement, you've talked about, I think you've been briefed on this force structure analysis, and the number has been talked about 40 BMD. So if we talk about 40 BMD, that is the latest update we did to the force structure analysis that defines what the BMD requirement is for Navy unique missions, which is, we had ships that defend fixed land sites. So if we needed to come up with a number, say, to defend the sea base and defend expeditionary sites, the number for that is 40. Now, when you get into COCOM demand, they will put out today's requirement. And based on situations that are evolving, we see Syria, any number of situations. So the COCOMs will come up and say, here is the demand. We need 2, 3, 5 sites. I guess the 77 number is there are potential sites for all COCOMs that they've identified that they could use a BMD ship for. So when that demand comes in, based on the inventory that we have available today, not out of a maintenance or things, then we will try to source that. If we cannot, then it has to be adjudicated. And so then we go back and work with the COCOM, Navy, COCOM, Joint Staff, and OSD to adjudicate which COCOM will get the ship and which will not.
So again, talking about the short term, which we alluded to a moment ago, I mean, if the balloon goes up, if there's just some all-out conflict going on, which we have a national security interest in, and the order goes out, I mean, you've obviously got the structured force plan, but I mean, describe what happens if that's the case. I mean, does the plan get set aside and, all hands on deck? Maybe
Sir,
you could
the
just
plan
talk
is
about
just for peacetime and presence operations to allow us that stability. If the balloon goes up as you describe it, we surge everything that we need as fast as we can. We have faith in both the industrial capability of the country to patch up in days and weeks what it normally takes months and years to do. We have faith in our training systems and our training that our sailors will be ready. We will strip everybody from every schoolhouse as an instructor that's already got that high-end knowledge and put them to sea and plus up where we need to go, and we'll go fight. And we'll take everything and we'll put it into that fight. Now, that's against a high and near-peer competitor, but we will surge everything we have, and we have sufficient capacity to do that at this point. One of our assumptions is that if we get into a fight, all this nice time about how long you're at home and how long you're at sea and how much time you get for maintenance goes right out the window, and we go fight the fight. We don't stick to a plan just because something else happens in the world. Yes, sir.
And your testimony, Admiral, earlier was that you feel that, in terms of a near-peer competitor, I mean, right today, in the near term, we're actually in a strong position to, make sure that our country is protected.
I have sufficient capability and capacity in my large surface combatants. I will not speak for the rest of the Navy. I get to be very parochial in my job. I get to deal with surface warfare only. In my large surface combatants to fight that large fight today against the capability and capacity that I see out there in advanced threats from a near-peer aggressor. Yes,
so looking out 10 years from now or 15 years from now, I mean, what keeps you up awake in terms of, or at night rather, what keeps you awake at night, thinking about that time frame?
So I am concerned that I will not be able to modernize or build new fast enough to be able to get to the capacity you and the chairman have mentioned in that 10 plus or minus year period. So right now, based on what we assume and what we think will happen around the world on build rates of advanced weapons, that's where we start to worry about the capacity and capability. That's where we think that our biggest risk lies right now, and that's what we're judging ourselves against.
And the existing shipbuilding plan talks about, again, the number of large surface combatants starting to go up probably within the next decade or so. And then, so, I mean, does that give you some sort of margin for error?
So my shipbuilding plan in the late teens, early 20s exceeds my current 88 number that we have set as a minimum of Navy large surface combatants. I get to just over 100, and then my decision point becomes on whether I can keep the oldest destroyers that, oh, by the way, I'm modernizing first right now with some advanced capability. If I can keep those to more than 35 years of life, and I can stretch them for about 5 years plus to 40 years of life. These are large capital investments. Surface shipbuilding of any sort is the largest single expenditure other than entitlements the United States government forestows on any program. And so we intend to keep those as long as possible. Allowing us to keep those to 40 years by maintenance and modernization then keeps me above that 88 minimum requirement well into the mid-20s, sir.
Which just about coincides with the Ohio replacement sort of surge in the budget, which, again, the shipbuilding plan assumes the future Congresses are going to find money for that, or that we're going to implement our sea-based deterrence fund to shield the rest of the fleet. But again, I mean, that's actually not a bad hedge to deal with that challenge, which is going to be, definitely a reality for the Navy in the 2020s.
Sir, I would say that you've hit on my biggest concern. First of all, since I look across the spectrum, I can say that our assessment is that as a Navy, we can deal with a near-peer competitor with some risk. The number that we've talked about here, 88, is the minimum requirement that we see we need to address steady state requirements and the most stressing scenario that we see, which is a near-peer competitor fight. So, but those numbers also assume that the ships are properly maintained so that they, and used so that they reach their expected service life. If that doesn't happen, then that's a concern.
Mr. Conaway is recognized for 5 minutes.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. If we had more than one high-end near-peer competitor come at us, the assessment looks like what at the same time?
If we have more than one high-end near-peer competitor today, we don't, as far as numbers, we would split our forces and the risk would increase. I cannot tell you that. It depends on the scenario, the ocean, where we are, and how determined we both are.
My assessment, sir, is based on a single near-peer competitor.
All right. 7 months deployment, existing ships. How do we communicate? You guys live this stuff every day, and it's second nature, and the members of the committee have a little bit better understanding, but we got to convince other folks in this conference that don't have the insights as to what that looks like and why it's important that we get there. We need graphics or metrics. What can you describe what, if you were limited to 7 month deployments with these ships, obviously the other stretch is you're not everywhere you need to be or you want to be, and you're not doing all these other kind of things. How do we describe to other policy deciders what that gap looks like from if you were just sticking with the 7 month in this deal versus what we give up, where we're not, all those other kind of risks that are associated? Is there a way to put that into graphics and easily understood, 1 minute elevator kind of talk?
Sir, if you're looking where we're operating today, we have essentially a carrier operating forward deployed in Yokosuka, Japan, a carrier strike group, and we also have a carrier now operating in the Middle East. So if you talk about what the fleet response plan does, it allows us to maintain at least 2 carriers deployed, but more importantly,
But that's with 9+ month deployments.
No, sir, this is still with the 7 month deployment construct in a 32 or in a 36 month cycle. But what it does allow us to generate is 3 additional strike groups ready to surge in an amount of time. So
the differential between where we are right now, where you'd like to get to, is 3 carrier strike groups.
yes, sir. Well, we're 2, and we want to build up our capacity to surge to 5. With 3 in standby in a certain amount of time. And this will allow us to do that. In the past, because...
But that doesn't get you to 7 month deployments now.
So let me put this.
Trying to get you 7.
Yes, sir. So 7 month deployments. So when we were at almost 600 ships, we were deploying approximately 100 ships at a year across the world. Right now, we're at around 300 ships, and we're still deploying 100 ships around the world. When we do that, we stretch these out.
Yeah,
When I was in the Middle East, sir, one of my ships went 11.5 months, and they set the record for the longest deployment out there.
Yeah.
A peacetime deployment.
Yeah, no, Admiral, we're on the same side on this. I'm just trying to figure out a way, how do I communicate those issues to folks who really don't know much about it?
Yeah.
And say, all right, here's the risk, here's the gap. If we went to 7 months, in other words, Congress put in the NDAA that you couldn't have a ship at sea more than 7 months out of 36. subject to a fight, you know, we're going to have to say, well, we can't be everywhere we are right now, because you're taking whatever ships you've got and you're stretching across all of those requirements to make that happen. And I'm just trying to get a feel for what we don't get to do if we went to the, if we had the capacity that you wanted.
Yes, sir. So if I look at it from the perspective that you're trying to put this in a contextual sense, 7 months out of 36, I miss one birthday or one Christmas every 3 years. All right, I miss one anniversary every 3 years. Right now, I'm at 9 out of 27, which means I'm up at missing 2 birthdays, 2 Christmases, and 2 anniversaries every 2.5 years. If I go and keep going on this path and I hit beyond 9, at that point, I don't watch softball games, Christmases, et cetera.
Sir, Carl Vincent just came back from deployment. She did a little over 9 months to San Diego, and my son was part of that deployment. I just came from the fleet, and we have planned now to schedule our future deployments at 7 months.
Okay. Let me ask you this, Admiral Mercado. You mentioned all of government. We want to make sure all of defense is in this fight. Are there folks just like you at the other services doing the same kind of analysis work on refereeing between all the various things? And then do you guys ever talk to each other, and how?
Yes, sir. They are. I've already spoken to my Marine counterpart once. You know, I'm fairly new in the job, so I'm reaching out to my Air Force counterpart. I have not spoken to my Army counterpart as yet.
Okay. There may be some value in making sure that you guys all talk to each other. Yield back. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks, gentlemen, for your service and the happy news today.
And in a follow-up to Mr. Conaway's questioning, have you guys done any wargaming in conjunction with our new strategy? And if so, what does that suggest in terms of the additional large surface combatants that we'll be needing?
A lot of the wargaming, sir, we've been doing with the numbers we expect to have. What we do is we now wargame with advanced weapons capabilities that actually increase the capability of those ships that we will have. As I said, it takes years to build a ship, so what I'm really doing now is increasing the capability of those ships, no matter how many I have and how long I have them, and getting them to be more lethal and getting them to see more to allow me to have that deterrence so the fight doesn't start.
At some point in time, what we'd just like for maybe you to do is come over and give us a briefing to follow up with what Mr. Conaway was saying, not of what we're trying to get to, but of what the wargaming would show we would have today.
Yes, sir.
If we had to be in one of those fights.
We can
And
do that. Yes, sir.
With that, we recognize the distinguished lady from Guam for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Admiral Fanta and, of course, Admiral Mercado, it's good to see you again. Thank you both for your testimonies today. My first question is regarding large surface combatants' role in the rebalance strategy. As we continue to rebalance to the Asia-Pacific region, can we assume that this will lead to an increased emphasis on Pacific deployments for amphibious readiness groups and their L-class ships? Either one of you, just a yes or a no.
So on the large surface combatants, the first capability I have of the advanced capability ships are being deployed to the Pacific, ma'am.
Okay. Admiral?
I think by our presence and how we're increasing our presence and putting our most capable ships there, I think the answer is yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Concurrently, recent events in Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East highlight ever-increasing requirements and commitments despite a decreasing number of large service combatants. Now, for instance, it is reported that combatant commanders receive less than half of their amphibious readiness groups' Marine Expeditionary Unit requirements. How do we resolve this dilemma?
Having just come from CENTCOM, the Marine amphibious units and the amphibious ships that support them are hugely valuable and in high demand, as you know. So I think to support the Marines have established a special purpose MAGTF to increase their presence, enhance their response. We have to be able to support them. So I know from a force provider standpoint, again, we have to continue to bias. The CNO wants us to be forward, and I know whatever we can't provide, that has to be adjudicated.
All right, thank you. Now I have one final question. With the proliferation of long-range precision strike missiles and sophisticated anti-access area denial systems throughout the Persian Gulf and in the Western Pacific, what is being done to ensure access into these contested regions? And what role do amphibious forces play in peeling back these A2AD rings to ensure access to contested maritime and littoral domains?
I would say from a capability standpoint, the capabilities that would peel that back it would fall primarily on the large surface combatants and the aircraft carriers, along with our partners in the Air Force and also the submarines, because that's where that's the capability and capacity that we have to do that to help support and gain access for our amphibious ships.
Mhm. Any comments?
Ma'am,
General Fanta?
from the perspective of if I have lethal capability on my ships and I shoot first and I shoot further, they have to stay further away, and I get more of a shot, and I get more defensive and offensive capability. From the Marines amphibious strike groups that are deploying now, we have to understand that they are about to start deploying with Joint Strike Fighter, which is the first 5th generation fighter we will have at sea, whether that's Navy or Marine Corps, and that will give us a significant advantage in that high-end fight.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
I thank the gentlelady, and we recognize now the gentleman from California, Mr. Cook, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You answered one of my questions about the F-35B, but this all the talk about missiles, and I'm a little bit unclear. I'll show my ignorance right now about talking about the Aegis missile system, and particularly the role of the system that's going to be in Romania. Obviously, we're going to not be discussing about moving it from point A to point B. Romania is a big anchor to pull up and move, but how do you think this experiment is going to play out in terms of fleet projection? If you've got one stationary site there with covering all these different areas there, is that going to relieve part of the deployment pressure?
So the two things that blend together. One, the Romania site is a defense of Europe site, and from that perspective, it's put in a spot that allows us to take care of, without going classified, the most likely threat against that area. What it adds to is it allows us to move our destroyers, and we have forward deployed 4 destroyers out of Rota, Spain, to currently cover that mission. It allows us to, 1, cover more areas, and 2, cover more missions than just the ballistic missile mission. So those four forward deployed ships are right now assigned to it, and they will see less pressure to be continuously in 1 or 2 spots in the ocean to do what Romania will pick up. Romania plus the future site in Poland will relieve even further the pressure on those 4 destroyers that we have there. That's not to say we will pull them back, because that capability is cumulative, but what we will do is now they don't have to stay in that one spot in the ocean for that length of time.
Yes, sir, you're right. We don't consider that a Navy unique mission. When I talked about peeling back, before we made an assumption that all 85 large surface combatants would be BMD capable. But when we peeled back that onion, it was instructive to assess what the force structure we need for Navy unique missions, and that mission is not Navy unique.
No, and you're right, and I know about NATO and everything like that in Poland. I'm just, I hope that if that works out well in terms of being a success, and we do have pressures with all these different deployments, and we don't come through with all these ships and everything else. I'm wondering if, at least in terms of gaming this or CPXing it or whatever term you're going to use in the future at the War College or what have you, that be part of the plan, because obviously it's part of the NATO plan. And I got my fingers crossed, because I'm not really sure how that's going to work out. So
So we have two aspects there, sir. It is part of the plan. It is part of the the war games we exercise. I recognize that these ships are forward. They're away from the continental United States, and they have their own stresses on them. But if I put 24 ships over there, I would still have a waiting list of people wanting to go over there and do that mission. I have to turn people away in droves to go live in Spain and live forward deployed on a destroyer, no matter how tough that mission is and how long they are at sea. So it's a combination of sailors doing what they want to be, forward and operational, and defending our allies throughout the world.
Thank you very much. I yield back.
Gentlelady from Florida, Ms. Graham, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have quite a large Air Force and Navy presence in my district, the 2nd Congressional District in Florida, Panhandle, essentially. And I've heard from both the Air Force and maybe not so much the Navy about challenges they face with maintenance. And I was curious, are y'all facing any difficulties with just the maintenance component of keeping your ships ready to go if necessary?
So we, for years, have been fighting to drive down what we call a backlog in maintenance. We have built up over years of multiple rapid deployments that continuously surged to wherever the hotspot in the world was. We built up a lot of maintenance backlog that we now have to drive down. Just like the Army or the Marines that were in the desert for years at a time, stress on their equipment now requires that to come back and be reset and recapitalized back in the CONUS to allow them to go through. I have to do the same sort of thing. The Army puts tanks into depots. The Marines put helicopters into depots to get that long-term deep maintenance done. I have to put ships into depots to get back to what that I need, and that's 35 to 40 years of life out of each ship.
I can also say it's better. Before, it was a concern. We were challenged. We had issues. Having just come from the fleet, and a lot of my ships and carriers were in maintenance, and the maintenance is now getting done. We just got to now be smart about how we do it, make sure, again, we start and stop on time. But now we see the surge where we are getting better with our maintenance.
That's really good to hear. You mentioned the backlog, Admiral. How long is the backlog, even if it's getting better?
So we have brought it down from approximately 3 years worth of backlog. We're down to less than a year now. We have put a consolidated amount of effort, time, and resources against this. Both fleet commanders have taken this on personally. Both type commanders, the surface forces on both the East and the West Coast, have taken this on personally. We have put billions of dollars against getting this backlog down and getting to the point where we can have a knowledge of what's wrong, a plan to fix it. We have a 6-year plan that we can lay out to exactly how much maintenance and modernization has to be done every year to stay on that. Where we fall short, and frankly, it's as your colleagues behind you were saying earlier, if we have to all of a sudden surge to a crisis, that takes up time from this. We're not saying we won't go. We will absolutely go, but it takes up time from getting to this backlog.
So is maintenance and modernization, are those combined? Are they considered the same, or are they different?
Modernization is when I take new systems, as the chairman was alluding to, and put new systems on cruisers, put new systems on destroyers, put new weapon systems throughout the fleet. That's modernization. Maintenance is a pump breaks. I need to put a new seal in it. I put it back together. I put it back in the ship, and the pump keeps working. So we blend those two together a lot of times because it goes in the same time. While I'm putting a new radar on the ship, I'm also fixing the pumps that are broken during that period of time, ma'am.
That's good common sense. Thank you very much. I appreciate your answers very much. And I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman from California, Mr. Hunter, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just got a simple question. We've been told this whole year, about everybody that comes in and briefs the full committee, that all of the near-peer competitors are very close to matching us technologically. We're all fairly close right now, and it's going to be closer and closer as we go forward, and other countries have the same software engineers that we have here for the most part. So my question is, when does quantity trump quality? You know, Chuck Yeager told a story when we were flying prop planes in World War II and the Germans had jets. I said, well, geez, that's got to be a hard dogfight. How'd you shoot down jets? And he said, well, they were all on the ground when we blew them up because they were just swarming them. We would just swarm them with prop planes. So that's my first question is, when does quantity trump quality?
So quantity is not just in ships, but it's about weapon systems I can employ. When we talk about capability and capacity, it's not just how many ships I have at sea, but how many weapons and how capable those weapons are and from how many directions I can hit the adversary. What I want to do is hit him from multiple directions and not even let him leave port. Same thing that Chuck Yeager did during World War II. Let me hit him now, let me hit him soon. And if I can't, that's risk to us. If I let him come all the way out, that's risk to us. If I let him continue to get all the way around me, so I got a 360-degree fight, that's risk to us. Now, I understand that may not always be possible, so we have to both defend and provide offense. We have to give the best capability we have to defend against those jets versus props, as well as now providing an offense to hit them on the ground with bombers before we start.
Yeah, I have to characterize that in the air realm where I look at is, the best example for me is the modernization going from, say, 4th generation to 5th generation fighters. As our air wings evolved from, say, the F-18ENF and the Joint Strike Fighter, and we start to populate our air wing with more higher-end fighters, the faster we can do that, then the exchange ratios between a 5th generation fighter and a 4th generation fighter, are what we like. If we don't do that and we stay on to the 4th generation model, then those exchange ratios aren't really what we want.
But the numbers you were given the chairman earlier on the numbers of ships, those were dependent. Those numbers are placed technologically versus
Yes.
other people right now, other near peer competitors. Technologically, the numbers that you gave them represent that. So if everybody's even, your numbers change dramatically for us. Meaning we would obviously have to have way more because you wouldn't have that technological edge over a near peer competitor, right?
So if I characterize it from a physics perspective, and I think that's maybe the easiest at this point, the faster the missile coming at me and the lower the radar cross-section, if you're talking about advanced capability, the more power I have to put out of my radar and the more processing I take out of my software. That means that I will have to have more of those radars on more ships around a wider area to handle a 360-degree fight sometime in the future when I'm fighting in the middle of a 360-degree battle against high-end weapon systems. I may have to have more ships. Vic's job right now is to model those numbers and tell you what they are, and that's what he's doing.
And when we look at the numbers, because when we talk about where the 88 number came from, that is after analysis based on a planning scenario against what we call our most stressing environment, which is that near peer competitor. That's where we come up with the minimum number to be able to defeat that threat. The minimum number. So, sir, your point's well taken. That number does matter. The 11 carriers, 88 large surface combatants, those numbers do matter, but they are minimum.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Whitman, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Admiral Fonta, Admiral Mercado, thank you so much for joining us. I want to ask a question related to how aircraft impact our large surface combatants. As you know, the F-35B is in the process of achieving IOC as its capability, and as you know, we're bringing on the F-35C, hoping that it gets ramped up, is able to be deployed with our carrier strike groups. How will the increased capability that comes with those aircraft, both in large deck amphibs, but also there in the aircraft carrier fleet, how's that going to affect the employment of large surface combatants then as part of carrier strike groups within the overall projection of power within the Navy?
So broadly, the further back I can keep the adversary from shooting with a 5th generation fighter pushing out deeper into his area, the less missiles come at me. Tactically, That's more sensors in the air to look for incoming threats. Every time we put a fifth-generation aircraft with its sensors in the air, that's more things I have looking for incoming threats, which means the more data I have to my ships, even the large surface combatants, to understand where those threats are coming from and to be ready for it and to counter that threat well before it gets to me. So it's both the fight in the long range, it's the fight in the high end, and it's the number of sensors, advanced sensors I have in the air at any one time.
And I would say, sir, in a carrier strike group environment, you know, we always talk about defense in depth. Yeah. So while we have the number of 5 surface combatants, 3 BMD capable, all AAW capable, now we have that layer whereby that joint strike fighter can be that outer ring defense. It still matters, a 5th-generation fighter against a 5th-generation adversary. So, and it's complementary, so our ships can help control that joint strike fighter, and then we also have the E2s and things like that, so we can fight alongside as well as our Air Force and Marine brothers.
Gotcha. Let me ask about the 35B as part of our amphibious, our large deck amphibs. What does that do to the Navy's ability to project power? Obviously, we have our large deck amphibs that are part of our MAGTAVs, but give me a perspective of how the Navy looks overall about 35B capability on the decks of our large deck amphibs.
So it's a significant increase over the current Harrier fleet. Even with the latest upgrade of the Harriers that carry air-to-air weapons. It's integrated, where a Harrier is essentially a put it up there, tell it where to go, tell it what to shoot, and bring it back. It's integrated into that battle force. It's integrated with the carriers, the large deck amphibs, any cruiser, any destroyer, any small surface combatant that's out there. That integration now is what brings us that next generation fight. It's not just point, shoot, forget, bring back.
I think it also gives us huge flexibility, sir, because our carriers cannot be everywhere. Right. And then our large deck amphibs, they have a battle rhythm and they support specific missions for the COCOMs. So now if you have the flexibility for a large deck amphib with the striking power that a joint strike fighter brings, it gives us much more capability where you may not need a carrier.
Gotcha. I want to go back to an answer to the question that you gave Mr. Hunter when you talked about the number of large surface combatants that are now functioning in the newer environment of A2AD. As you said, the structure now for Carrier Strike Group is 5 large surface combatants with that strike group. But you talked about needing potentially more within that A2AD environment. Give me your perspective on how many more and under what type of situations. Would they be in all situations or only under certain situations? Give us a little more refinement, because I'm interested in the comment that you had about needing more than 5 in that as part of the Carrier Strike Group.
So that 5 is a baseline number that we use. The higher the fight, the more intense the fight. Obviously, every commander out there, Admiral Mikado just came back, would like more and more coverage and more weapons to employ. It's not just about large surface combatants. And I recognize this hearing is about large surface combatants, but small surface combatants with a heavy anti-submarine capability integrated into that strike group now take away some of the pressure of that large surface combatant to have to do that anti-submarine mission while it's also looking for ballistic missile or air threats. So it's not just, I need X number of ships that have to be full up large surface combatants. I will need the emphasis of those large surface combatants targeted against the highest threat that's coming at me. And then I will need to relieve some of the pressure on things like anti-submarine warfare with P-8s off the land bases, with littoral combat ships, with helicopters, with submarines in a direct support role out there providing that screen. We don't just fight with a carrier strike group and a bunch of destroyers and cruisers. We fight as a Navy. And that will allow me to essentially do my mission with the number of ships I have, whether that's 5, 6, 7, 10. As Admiral Mikado and I were talking before we walked in here, if we had the choice, we would walk across the Pacific on the deck of a destroyer, occasionally stubbing our toes, stepping down onto a submarine and up onto an aircraft carrier. And we would love more, but we also recognize I can only build so many. And I need all these ships and all these aircraft and all these submarines and aircraft carriers working together to get me where I need to go.
Sir, I would add that that's one of the benefits of the optimized fleet response plan. While we ramp up our training and we have a carrier strike group with 5 surface combatants and we run it through its training, what we have done in this construct is with the independent deployers that we have that are primarily trained to fill a BMD demand, what we endeavor to do now is to bring them in with the strike group training. So now you have a strike group who is deploying, and you have independent deployers, maybe 2 or 3 DDGs, who are going to be out there at the same time. It makes perfect sense to bring them into the training because you never know when you're out there where you need to re-aggregate. And these ships are not just single mission ships. They're not single mission BMD ships. So that allows us actually the flexibility to grow if required based on the mission.
Gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Rhode Island is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gentlemen, thank you for your service and for your testimony today. Admiral Fanta, I think the last time I saw you, I believe we were discussing small surface combatants. So it's good to see you here to talk on the other side of the coin, if you will. So I've noted with interest Vice Admiral Rodin's article in Proceedings earlier this year that talked about distributed lethality and hunter-killer service action groups. And it's an intriguing concept, I believe, and attractive in many ways. But given the mix of capabilities on ship classes involved, in particular with the dearth of defensive anti-air on the Independence and Freedom classes, I'm curious as to how it could affect the demand signal for certain capabilities. How do you foresee this concept, if applied, affecting the demand for large surface combatants? Would it cause the Navy to reprioritize certain programs such as LCS modernization efforts?
So there is a perception that LCS does not have an anti-air capability. Right now, the CRAM and RAM capability I am installing on LCS is one of the most capable weapons in the world against a high-end threat. That's today. And that is being installed on LCS today. There's a misconception that I have to guard LCS against air threats. Right now, I am installing that same CRAM capability, not only on LCS, but my high-end destroyers that deploy to various parts of the world that may face those same threats. So I'm leveling the force. As you mentioned, Admiral Rodin's article that we co-authored with both the Surface Forces Atlantic, us, and Admiral Rodin, the idea is if it floats, it fights. I give every ship the capability of an offensive punch and a defensive punch. Now, that may not be just the capability of an oiler to shoot a ballistic missile down. That's not what we're talking about. But every ship out there should be able to contribute to the fight, to the capability that it has. As you know, we are looking at the expansion of the LCS program to include what's now been called the frigate, and that will have over-the-horizon missiles. Over-the-horizon missiles knocks the enemy back. It makes him think about every LCS out there as a potential threat. When we put these defensive systems on LCS, it not only makes it survivable, but it makes it lethal to the adversary. We have to be able to make him think about not just large surface combatants, not just aircraft carriers and submarines, but about every surface ship that's afloat out there everywhere that it can deploy from.
Sir, I would say distributed lethality has huge potential. As we transition our mindset from purely defensive and we give more offensive capability to our surface combatants, that is just another resource for the COCOMs to use in adjusting their plans, against any potential competitor. So, and once, as this progresses, then that comes back to my shop to do the assessments.
Thank you. Thank you for that answer. Let me turn to something else I spend a lot of time on, and that's directed energy. Can you provide us with an update on your efforts to prepare the surface fleet for the integration of directed energy weapons? What role do you envision those capabilities taking on, both on LCS and other ship classes that would be covered under the concept of distributed lethality?
So just today, Admiral Mikado and I were discussing one of the latest successes in in that energy-type weapon system. Our forward fleet operating base of Ponce, USS Ponce, out in the Middle East, shot down multiple drones with a directed energy weapon, and that results of that just came back. We are at that level that we can shoot down both, not only dazzle the adversary, but we can shoot down his surveillance assets, and we have proven that. We are expanding that to not only look at drones, but high-end weapon systems and the advances that we have. We are not there yet, but we are close, and we are continuing to advance in there.
In our assessment, sir, munitions matter. So numbers of munitions matter in any type of exchange. So when you can use directed energy or low-cost munitions, then that increases your advantage.
Sure. Well, I want to, again, commend the Navy on being forward-leaning on directed energy, more so than any of the services right now. And I think this is a capability that is maturing faster than what most people realize. And it's good to see that the Navy is already got something fielded, and it's a test platform, but also an active system. So I know my time's expired. I've got a bunch of other questions, but I'll submit those for the record, Mr. Chairman. I'll yield back.
We thank the gentleman for his hard work in this area and so many different times. And Mr. Conaway has one follow-up question, then Mr. Courtney. And
Peterson. Well,
didn't have.
all right. I'm a CPA, so I'm trying to get back to an answer on my ham-handed question. So let's hold 100 ships constant, 9.2 months. So that equates to about 27,600 days at sea. You divided that by 210 days, you got 131 ships. So is the differential for this conversation 31 ships additional to get you the 7 months?
The math works, as you said, and I won't, because there's...
Well, I know there are a lot of variables in there, but this is the back of a napkin,
and
we don't...
At 70 or at 88 to 90 ships, you're at 9 months plus. At around, the math works out to around 100 to 105 ships, you're at 8 months. At around 110 to 112 ships, you're at 7 months. The math, you're absolutely right. It's a 0.19 ship availability, and that's how you get to that number, sir.
I got you. So somewhere in the 25 to 30 ship range, you'd be whole at the 7-month deployment.
If
Plus or minus.
Holding all else constant. Yes, sir.
I guess. All right, you go back.
It's always good to have a CPA on the committee with us.
Here.
I was told there'd be no maths.
That's Mr. Courtney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have the force inventory chart, which shows the next 30 years for all different categories, which I guess that's kind of what your portfolio has you looking over all the time. But as far as the requirement for advanced ballistic missile defense ships, the 40 that we've been talking about, and the 33 that we're at today, I mean, we don't have that chart. So can you, maybe you said this already, but can you just sort of give us a projection starting in 2015? When do we hit the 40 requirement, and will we stay there, or will we keep going up, or we,
Yes,
is there going to be?
So I'm building them now, and I'm modernizing to that capability now. So I have the first ships out there already of that advanced capability, of the 40. Let me start that as a subset. Roughly at the build rate of 2 new ships a year and modernization of approximately 2 destroyers or destroyer cruisers a year, I will have hit my 40 ships at 2026. If you increase those numbers by any amount, the soonest I could have them is in 2024 and a half. So if I gave you 3 a year, 4 a year, 5 a year, basically, I can only build 2 new ships a year right now. That's kind of constant based on my Ohio replacement numbers. But it's the modernization that moves me up and down on that, whether I move left or right on the 2026 number. That's for the high-end capable ships. The ships that don't get modernized to that high end will still have ballistic missile capability, And now we'll make up not only, beyond that 40, we'll make up the additional ships up to, as has been mentioned, 77 or give or take that number, all right, around the world. So just because I have not upgraded that ship to the highest end capability, it does not mean it's put it off to the side. It is good for that defense of Europe, defense of somewhere else, that defended asset list that I've now got at sea. The advantage of mine is I'm portable. If you change that, if somebody points a ballistic missile at a different part of the world and I've got ocean space in there, I can put that ship in there. I hit my 40 number in about 2026 based on the current build and modernization rate.
And Admiral, just to follow up on that, these are very important. You've emphasized how important they are. Why did the Navy take out 5 of their destroyer modernizations for BMD in the fight-up this year if they were so crucial?
Fiscal challenges.
So it's purely money.
Purely money.
Mr. Langevin, recognized for one additional question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Admiral, so I've heard a variety of explanations as to why the DDGs are less capable in the air warfare commander role in a carrier strike group. Lack of staffing, lack of facilities, the more senior and experienced leadership generally found on CGs, deeper magazines, et cetera. Is it a physical or staffing limitation that drives the desire for CGs in the AWC role? And which concerns are able to be mitigated and which are not?
So primarily the physical capabilities of the ship, having 2 radar deck houses, vice 1 on a destroyer, is something I can't add another deck house to a destroyer. I cannot have that redundancy, nor can I add another 30 missiles to a destroyer. That's a physical limitation. I could make the crew more senior, I could give them more experience, I could put more of them on to the limits of the amount of bunks I have on that ship. I am bunk limited for the number of people I have on that. So from the flexibility of the experience, the training, and to some extent, a few more people, I could increase that towards the level of that cruiser, but I cannot physically change the dimensions of the destroyer, primarily in the amount of redundancy and the amount of weapons it has on board, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Gentlemen, as we mentioned to you earlier, we can't thank you enough for the service you've both given to our country, but we thank you. And one of the things we'd like to do now is offer you any additional time you need for things that you think are important that we get on the record that maybe no one's asked you, or any clarifications you need to make. So, Admiral Fanta, why don't we start with you?
Yes, sir. I recognize that there is always a tension between what we have to fight today and what we have to fight tomorrow. There is always risk we will miss something and not catch the latest development by a potential adversary. That's our job, to blend those risks back and forth. There's the risk that I won't fund that key element somewhere that would make the entire change the entire face of something 10 years down the road. We offer our best estimate on the most risk mitigated way forward, given what we see as resources today and tomorrow. What we are recommending is that we blend the large surface combatants to a number of minimum of 88 and exceed that where we can over the next 15 years or so while we are building the Ohio replacement, to allow our nation to recapitalize that one key element that we cannot forsake, and that's our ability to be safe using a nuclear deterrent. So we recognize, as much as I'm a parochial surface warfare officer, I recognize also that there is a higher need for some elements of the national defense. And I would ask that we can blend those large surface combatants at 88 or above over that period of time where we are recapitalizing this force. If, sir, you can help us take that off the table and make it all about large surface combatants, we are all in, and from that perspective, we are ready to have that conversation on how many and how fast.
Good.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Admiral?
Sir, we talked about this a little bit here, but my primary concern is warfighting and capability and capacity against that near-peer competitor, like we said. So my biggest concern is downstream is essentially Ohio replacement and the potential impact it could have on our capability and capacity if we are tasked to fund that entirely. So right now, we can do, just like Admiral Fanta said in the opening, we can deal with a near-peer competitor with the numbers we have. My concern is the effect on that capability and capacity, depending on how we address the bill of Ohio replacement.
Well, let me just tell you guys, to hopefully lay some of your fears, this is probably one of the most bipartisan subcommittees and maybe committees in Congress, and we're the best team we know how to field to do exactly what you want to do. And so we're going to continue to fight. We had 321 members of Congress that agreed with you the other day, and I think that will continue forward, but we're going to fight to make sure we accomplish those goals that you just laid out for us. So with that, if we don't have any additional questions, thank you both for being here, and we're adjourned.